Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to teach you guys how to make this really comfy slouchy cluster stitch hat. If you would like the written pattern for this project, you can go to the iCard above to the link at the top of this video to get it for a small fee. Then come on back and we will begin. Again, welcome to Fiber Theory. For those that watch all of my videos, welcome back. If you're new and want to get the next notifications for my upcoming videos, go ahead and subscribe now and hit that bell icon. For this project today, I am using Red Heart with Love Metallic, size 4 worsted weight yarn in the color Rose. I think this style of yarn will really add to the look of this hat. This yarn calls for a 6.5 hook, but for this project we're going to use a size I, or 5.5 millimeter hook. This hook is part of the Clover Amour set. I love them and rarely use any other hooks anymore. The coating on these hooks create a smooth gliding effect so that you don't snag or rub against the yarn. You can buy them as a set or you can buy them as singles. I got mine on Amazon, but you might also find them at Joann's Fabrics. So let's go ahead and get started. So many of you have asked me for patterns of the projects that I teach. This is the first of many to come, and this is what it looks like. You can get it from Fiber Theory on Etsy, or scroll back to the beginning of this video where I've added in the iCard to find the link, and you can get it there. For this pattern, you will need a size I crochet hook, a size 4 worsted weight yarn, a stitch marker, a yarn needle and scissors, and this pattern if you have it. There are 4 sizes for this hat in the pattern: adult, child, toddler, and baby. It shows you the amount of stitches and rows you'll need for each size. So grab your materials and let's jump into it. I'm making the adult size hat for this tutorial, and the first thing that we need to do is make our slip knot. So make your slip knot and then chain 10. Now we begin the band. You will want to bypass the loop that the working yard is coming from and work in the first space to the right. You will make your first single crochet. Then continue single crochets down the chain to the last space. When you finish working the chain, chain 1, and this chain 1 counts as your first single crochet of the next row. Now turn your work, and in the top of the very first post right here, working in the back loop, make your second single crochet. Then work single crochets down the row in the back loops. Chain 1 and turn. You're going to repeat exactly what you just did. Remember that your chain 1 is your first single crochet of the next row, and make sure you have 10 single crochets in every row to keep your band straight. Work these back loop single crochets for 56 rows, or for the amount of the rows that the pattern calls for. When you finish, I'll meet you at the end and we'll slip stitch the 2 ends of the band together. Okay, now that the band is finished and you have the amount of rows needed for the size that you're making, let's bring both ends of the band together and slip stitch it together. Make sure to have the hook in front so that you can work from right to left. Make sure you have exactly 10 slip stitches for the adult and child hats, 8 for the toddler hat, and 6 for the baby hat. And now you are going to make the very last slip stitch of the row, and when you get finished you're going to turn the band right side out so the bulky part of the seam is on the inside. Insert the hook back into the loop, and now we will be working in the peaks and the valleys of the brim. The current loop on the hook is technically in the valley, so we will be making 1 single crochet in the same space as your chain 2. The chain 2 counts as the first single crochet. We will be working 2 single crochets in each peak and each valley all the way around. Pull the loose strand of yarn in front so you don't have it in the way. Now we will chain 2. This counts as your first single crochet of this row. Now make another single crochet right next to it in the same space as your chain 2. Now we have 2 single crochets in the same spot. You might want to add your stitch marker right here where the chain 2 is so that you can see where to join at the end of the row. Also, this strand of loose yarn will also be a landmark for where the row begins. Now in each peak and valley, make 2 single crochets. These are your increases that will make the slouchy effect of your hat. Okay, continue making your single crochet increases around the brim until you come to the start of the row or where your stitch marker is, and I will meet you there. Okay, so I have 110 stitches right here, and where this yarn is sitting, you'll notice that your stitch marker is just above it under the first V. There's still a peak on this right side of the stitch marker that needs to be worked into. So that means we need 2 more single crochets in this space right here. Just find a spot in this row that you can fit the hook easily. Then right where this V is, or where your stitch marker is, you'll slip stitch to join the row. Now for row 2, we will chain 2. Go ahead and move your stitch marker to that chain 2 space. The chain 2 counts as your first single crochet of this row. Now we will skip 2 spaces, and in the next space, or the third space, we will single crochet. Now chain 2. Then skip 2 spaces and make the single crochet in the next space. Chain 2, skip 2 spaces, then single crochet in the next space. This is what you're going to be doing for the entire row. This is a setup row for our clusters. Continue this pattern to the end of the row, and I'll meet you there. Now that we have the last chain 2, we will then slip stitch into the starting chain 2 space to join the row. Then you will chain 3. For row 3, we will start making our clusters. This first cluster is made in this same chain 2 space that we joined into. Alright, now go ahead and yarn over and insert your hook into the chain 2 space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert the hook again into the same chain 2 space, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through the first 2 loops. Now you have 3 posts and 3 loops on the hook, and all of the very first clusters that you do will be just like this. Now go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and then when you're finished with that, you'll need to chain 1 to finish off the cluster. Now yarn over and go into the next chain 2 space, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, go into the same chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, and then we'll do it one more time. Yarn over, insert the hook into the space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. Now you have 4 loops on the hook and 3 posts. Go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 4 loops and chain 1. And yarn over, insert through the next chain 2 space, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, yarn over again, insert into the chain space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. We'll do it one more time. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, then yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on the hook, and chain 1. From here on out, all of your clusters will be just like that, 4 loops on the hook and 3 posts in the chain 2 space. Go ahead and finish this row, and I will meet you at the end in the last chain 2 space. Okay, now we're at the end, and we're going to go ahead and finish this last chain 2 space together. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up the loop through the first 2, and then just continue on until you finish your cluster. And then finish the cluster off and chain 1. Now we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into the very top loop of this chain right there, and slip stitch to join the row. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue with another row 2 where we chain 2, and then between the clusters we're going to make our single crochets. So go ahead and do that. When you get the single crochet made, chain 2. Then find the next spot and make a single crochet, chain 2. Go between the next 2 clusters and make your single crochet. And chain 2, and that's all you have to do. Then go ahead and finish this row exactly like I just showed you, and I will meet you at the other end. And then we will slip stitch into the first chain 2 space that we made in the row when we join. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row. We're going to go ahead and find that chain 2 space so we know where we're going to connect. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to skip over the cluster and go into that chain 2 space and join my row. Alright, so in this row here, we're going to go ahead and make another cluster row. You'll make your clusters inside the chain 2 spaces, and just the way that I showed you on the last row, go ahead and make your first chain 3 into the chain space and make that first cluster. You'll have 3 posts and 3 loops on the hook for that first cluster. Go ahead and pull through all 3 loops and chain 1, and then continue down and make your other clusters. This one will have 3 posts in the chain 2 space and 4 loops on the hook. At this point you already know what to do because we've already done a row just like it. If you need to refresh yourself, go ahead and go back to that row where we did the clusters on the video, and I will see you at the end of this row. Okay, so we are at the very end of the row. Go ahead and make your very last cluster in this last chain 2 space. And then we are going to slip stitch into the very top space of this starting chain and connect the row, and you're done. Chain 2. Remember to make your single crochets between all of the clusters. Make sure you chain 2 between the single crochets, and then I will see you at the end of this row. Okay, so we are at the end of the row, and we are going to connect. Make sure you have your chain 2, skip over the cluster, and into the chain 2 space, go ahead and join your row. Now this is what you're going to do. You're going to follow these 2 repeats, the cluster and the chain 2, skip 2 rows throughout the hat until you have 7 cluster rows for the adult hat. After the 7th cluster row, you're going to finish off with a chain 2, skip 2 row, and I will meet you after that last row, which is a row 4 repeat, and then we'll get started on our decreases together. So go ahead and work on the hat by yourself and count your repeats, make sure that you have exactly what you need, and I will see you then. Okay, so we finished the hat for the most part here. You have a nice wide body, which is going to be nice and chunky around the top of your head, and your brim is nice and narrow, so it should fit very, very nicely. And now we're going to go ahead and get started on our decreases. So the first thing we're going to do is put 2 single crochets in each chain 2 space. Your chain 2 that you just made at the front here counts as your first single crochet. Go ahead and put your stitch marker in there now if you have one, and it will hold your place for when we join the row at the end. Okay, go ahead and make 2 single crochets in each chain 2 space around. Since we are making an adult size hat in this video tutorial, you will have 72 single crochets in this row. Go ahead and work on this portion of the hat, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, now that we're at the end of the row, go ahead and join your row right there with a slip stitch. We are going to make a decrease right here over these next 2 single crochet stitches. You have 3 loops on the hook. Grab the yarn and pull through all 3, and now you just made a decrease. And then in the next space, you're going to make 1 single crochet. And then in the next 2, make 1 decrease. You're just going to copy the last row. And then in the next stitch, you're going to make 1 single crochet, and then a decrease over the next 2 stitches, and a single crochet in the next spot, and 1 decrease over the next 2 stitches. And then all you're going to do is follow this pattern all the way around to the other end of the hat, and then we will join the row together. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row. I am going to have to do 1 more decrease over these very last 2 stitches right here. Once that decrease is made, that little space right here is where I'm going to connect. Make sure that it's in the same space where your stitch marker is, or where that very first V of the row starts. So now I'm going to go ahead and let you guys work on the decrease rows from here on out on your own. You're going to want to make sure that you have about 6 to 12 single crochet spaces left at the top of the hat. And when you get to about 6 to 12 single crochets, then we will sew up the top of the hat. So here we are at the end. I'm ready to sew up my hat, and I'm going to pull out my scissors and my trusty yarn needle. And I just use a little pill bottle. It helps me to keep everything together. You can see all my little stuff down here, my stitch markers and everything, and stuff for one of my ergonomic handles. You can see that the hole on the top of my hat is pretty small. I only had about 12 stitches, I think, left at the top. So go ahead and cut your working yarn. And then grab that yarn with your hook and pull it through that very last loop and tighten it down. And then you're going to thread your needle. And then keeping the hat right side out, just go ahead and start weaving between the posts of the single crochets. Just back and forth weaving, just like that. And by doing that on the outside, it's like a mattress stitch. Basically, you're pulling the very top V's inward toward the inside of the hat, so it actually looks like it was sewn from the inside. So keep going all the way around until you've gotten your needle around each one of the single crochets. And then pull it tight. And then what you'll do is take your needle and insert it right into the very center where the hole was. Insert it and push it through. And on the inside of your hat, kind of unravel it here and pull that needle through. Pull it tight. And now you're going to start doing your basic knotting. Find a spot and then just start knotting like as if you were sewing. Do that a couple of times until you feel like it's not going to unravel on you and then it won't ever come out again. I do about 3 or 4 times. That's kind of how I like to do it. And then start hiding your yarn around different spots. It doesn't really matter where you go, just as long as you don't go through the entire hat to the top. You don't want it to be seen on top. And then when you're done at the base, just go ahead and get your scissors and cut it. And make sure to turn your hat right side out again. And now it's nice and chunky and it's ready to be worn. So right here, you're going to want to make sure that you don't forget to sew in the tail from where you started your brim. So go ahead and thread your needle. And then the way that I like to do it is put the needle kind of through in a space and push it through the other side so that when you're sewing it in, you won't notice it on the outside when you're wearing it. So just pick some spots. What I do is I come up above where I just sewed it up and then I go back down. And then I bring it around and I go up a little bit and bring it down. This way it can't unravel on me. And I do that 3 or 4 times. Sometimes the way I do it's a little bit of overkill, but I would rather it be overkill than have it come undone. And then you're just going to snip it at the base without cutting any of your other stitches, and you are finished. And now you have a nice slouchy hat, and I hope you'll wear it often. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and for all the latest updates on future projects, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at the handle @FiberTheory. Remember to subscribe and hit that bell icon for all future project notifications. Have a great day.